Test. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me at the back of the room? Yes, I hear nods. All right. If I get quieter, just raise your hand or go like this, and I will perk back up. Thank you all for being here on this fine Friday afternoon. We're here to talk about analytics. Just a quick poll in the audience. Who in this room has administrator rights on their Google Analytics account? Fantastic. Okay, great. Who would consider themselves to be a developer in this room? Okay, fantastic. Is there anyone who considers themselves to be an analyst? Awesome. A couple people. By the end of this talk, more hands will be going up next time this question is asked. I don't really watch TV anymore. I think this is like a really interesting trend that has happened in the last year, actually. Television viewership has gone down and crossed the threshold with mobile. More videos are viewed on mobile than on television. For me, the line is way, way down. I don't watch TV at all. And really, desktop. It's going to be hard. I mean, I can't even like hold it, right? All right, so mobile in this context is considered to be not only phones, but also tablets. So a lot more time is being spent with our devices. And this is non-dedupe, which means it doesn't account for the fact that people are on one device while they're viewing another. So on your phone while you're on TV. So our overall exposure to multiple screens increases how many different views of these objects we're seeing at the same time. This is dramatic. Oh my goodness. I don't know about you, but it definitely makes me think about Scott McCloud and understanding comics. Scott talked about this space called the gutter, which is where all the magic happens. It's the space in between the panels. As you're telling the story, the action is implied, and it's your imagination that is filling in the gaps. One gap my mind started to fill was that I was spending too much time on my phone. And the analytics agree, of course. Most adults are also trying to limit their screen time. And parents, which I am one, have, comparatively in the last 3 years, dramatically increased how much control they're exercising on not only websites, traditional websites in the browser, but on the phone. This is pretty intense. Really, analytics, and what I hope to impart upon you in this talk, is it's all about the power of reinforcing story. Analytics are a tool that we can use to drive change. My name is Andrew Malice. I'm from Kalamuna. We make your mission our mission. We work with mission-driven organizations, a lot of universities, many of whom are in the Bay, and nonprofit organizations, innovative green tech companies, some utilities, associations like the American Foundation for the Blind. For those of you that do live in the Bay, expect to see a rejuvenated and beautiful Fast Track website in the coming months. We're based in Oakland, though our team is distributed around the world, though mostly concentrated in the Bay and in Toronto. We love to share our knowledge in events such as this, speaking at conferences because knowledge should be free. And we love to organize events, as we did for the Drupal community for the occasion of Drupal 6's ultimate demise. We held a funeral in New Orleans with a second aligned jazz band and some speeches from Dries and other luminaries. It was a beautiful event. We worked really hard on this software, and it meant something to let it go. We are also looking to foster conversation in the Drupal community. We're all here to learn new things and how to do things, but why we do them is equally important. So we try and create some dialogue around important topics to us and to others by engaging conference goers in conversation and raising funds for important organizations. Last year at that camp, we raised funds for the ACLU, EFF, and Planned Parenthood, at DrupalCon for One Tree Planted. And this year, if you visit our booth, you can help us address some of the issues in a small part that are happening at the southern border. Well, enough about us, more about you and why you should invest in analytics. They are very useful to help you understand what works and doesn't in your system. Once you understand that problem, then it's easier to make adjustments and have a greater impact on your audience. That's what we're all here to do, I hope. But where to start? It can be overwhelming. There are over 115 discrete menu options when you enter Google Analytics. That's a lot. Why are we there? Why do we have a website? What is the purpose of our website? If we start to think about those questions, it makes it a little bit easier to try to find the answers to those problems that we're trying to solve. I often see people looking at the analytics to try to find answers for questions they haven't yet asked. We take time. What is your website for? Is it a fundraising platform? Well, then what are you trying to achieve? You're trying to get people to submit a form. If you are a university, you want students to register. These are the types of outcomes that we're looking to achieve, and therefore they're the types of outcomes that we need to track. We'll talk a little bit more about the concepts and tools that are available to you to achieve those ends. A little disclaimer, caveat emptor. I am not an analyst, though I do raise my hand when that question may be asked sometimes, because I know enough to be dangerous. Our senior analyst, Vadim, has taught me very much. He gave a training yesterday. Maybe some of you were lucky to attend here at Badcamp. And a lot of what I've learned are things that I've learned from him. I want to start with a couple definitions and some metaphors. I think metaphors are powerful. They're the foundation story. Talking about storytelling. Okay. So user sessions and page views. These are like kind of some of the baseline concepts that we're looking to track. Let's just use this metaphor of a mall, right? Say you're going to the mall, and you walk around, you visit some stores, and then you leave. So a person is like a user. They can visit your website, which is like a mall, and every time they visit visit the mall, that's a session. It's like I had a session at the mall. Every time they go to a store, that's a page view. They visit multiple stores, it's multiple page views. Okay. Pretty clear? Yeah, so far. Let's take it further. What is a session? When does it start? When does it end? It's as soon as someone starts acting on your website. This timer starts after 30 minutes of inactivity, then they're gone. So if they come back to your website again, that's another session. If someone keeps the web page open like all day, it doesn't really matter. They come on, they go to another page. That's like starting a new session. It typically doesn't cross devices, so there is some new code that you can use and implement that will help to track this, but usually if you go and pick up your phone and then keep doing the same thing, that could be another session, depending on how you've got things set up. Another important thing that really just kind of blew my mind is that analytics has no way of measuring duration for the last page that someone visits on the site. Back to this metaphor of a mall. Say I go to the mall and I'm in the electronics store, for a bunch of time, and then I go on a clothing store, and then I'm really hungry. I'm going to sit down in the food court, I'm going to have a meal for like half an hour, and then I leave. Well, leaving isn't tracked, because you haven't clicked on anything. So that whole interaction that you've had for half an hour in the food court, which is quite meaningful if, the purpose of your whole mall is to get people to the food court, it isn't tracked. So that being said, session duration, which some people do look at, and look at quite importantly, it may or may not be the most important measurement of engagement and therefore user intent. What are people coming here to do? Well, it depends on what your site is trying to achieve. But there are a lot of different dimensions that we can look at to solve this problem. Events are extremely meaningful. They offer a level of granularity. What is an event? Will the video play? I don't know. Let's see. Pardon me. All right. Play, come on. I don't even have controls on this. Fantastic. All right, well, let me talk you through it. So an event is an action that's triggered when the user interacts with your website. And it's something that can be tracked. Not by default, however. Some of the most important actions to you, to me, aren't things that Google Analytics comes built in with. You can't just install Google Analytics and automatically know how many PDFs were downloaded on your website. You can't automatically know when someone pressed play on your video. But these are important events, and events that can distinguish one user's intent and the success that your website is expressing in regards to the goals that you've set for its purpose. So there's this thing called the Solutions Gallery. Has anyone ever downloaded something from the Solutions Gallery before? A couple people? You can check it out. I mean, it's a mosh pit of a lot of things, but it is rated and pretty good. And I'll tell you guys in a little bit how you can experiment with some of this without blowing up your existing analytics account, which is really kind of important. But there's a lot of things that you can learn from how others have done things, the way that we learn from other members of the Drupal community by following in their footsteps. And you can check those out. And we'll come back to events in a little bit and how we can track those. Another concept that I would like to impart upon you is the notion of goals. A goal, if we don't set them, we can't really achieve them, right? These are some example goals. Some of them may seem familiar to you because maybe they're goals your website also has. You want people to fill out your contact form and email you. You want people to download a file. Maybe you have an annual report on a page. Maybe you want people to log into your website to begin with because you have a member portal, and that's a really important reason for being. You might want people to share your content on social media. You want people to play your videos. None of these goals are necessarily trackable just by installing Google Analytics, and none of them are reportable unless you do a little configuration. More on that in a sec. But here's what you can expect to get. Once you set a goal, you can generate some reports. These are some goals for e-commerce. You may have seen some of these types of funnels where someone puts something in the cart, maybe they abandon the cart, maybe they achieve their goal of completing that transaction. That's really cool. How many of you do e-commerce on your websites? A little bit. Some e-commerce is might just be a donation. It doesn't necessarily need to be retail or purchasing. But if it is an important part of what you're taking on, I would suggest looking at the enhanced e-commerce option, which is a paid thing in Google. It's not too expensive, but it is worth it. It really helps you to describe that whole user journey across the funnel, and in a way that's a little bit more intuitive and meaningful, and connects more cleanly with what you can track. Who's worried about their bounce rate? A little bit.
We understand it.
All right, let's define bounce rate. A bounce is when is a single page session. Someone goes into your site, looks at one page, and then they're gone. It's used to be seen as failure. In many cases, it can be success. Fewer and fewer entry points to your website are on the home page. Many people enter your website through a long tail of content that they find through organic search. They Google something, they get to your site. Maybe they found exactly what they needed to because your site is so well crafted, uses all kinds of beautiful techniques to get them exactly what they're looking for, and you've got great rankings. Is that a failure? I don't think so. Maybe they'll come back, maybe your site has a different kind of interaction and you do want to engage and may have multiple page views. But again, it's not absolute. Everything depends on what you're trying to achieve. It really doesn't have, you can't tell from a bounce how long people have spent on your site either. They might be reading your blog post for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, taking notes. They might be using it to show to a classroom full of people like this. Who knows? Don't stress out too much about your bounce rate. You know. Another thing that's worth mentioning is that bounces are filtered out from other larger statistical analysis on Google Analytics. So if you're looking at that session duration that we were talking about earlier, which again, with a grain of salt, it's only going to look at all those sessions that aren't bounces. So if your bounce rate is pretty high, say at 70%, your session duration is only measuring engagement on non-bounces. But again, if you've got a news site or like a site that's full of articles and people are coming there and they're spending 20 minutes on an article, you'll never really know, looking at your session duration, what your user engagement is just from how Google Analytics is tracking things. But fear not, we have some other solutions for that too coming up. All right. How is data organized in Google Analytics? UA codes, you guys are familiar with UA codes. You have to put them in when you install the modules or you put the code or anything. So the UA code, it starts with UA. It stands for Urchin Analytics. Anyone remember Urchin here? Yeah, probably had a fax machine in your office at the same time. So Google Analytics bought Urchin back in the day, and you may have inherited some like crazy old websites, and you look in the server logs, and there's like all these GIFs and reports and everything, and anyways, Urchin's from that era, and the account number informs your UA code, and then depending on the properties, there's a little number attached to it. But generally, your organization is a container inside of which you have an account. You can have multiple properties in that account, each with individual UA codes, potentially, and then different views within that property. Now, the default view, when you first fire up Google Analytics, is called All Website Data. Kind of confusing. Highly recommend that you change that. May not be as possible to change it after the fact, but if you're starting, you can follow this methodology. Who on their website only has a live version and like nowhere to test anything? Couple people? Does it stress you out? Yeah. Okay. Same thing with your analytics. You want to test things to make sure you don't break them, because if you break them, then you're not collecting data anymore potentially. So we have a test view. And that's where you can experiment with things and be wild and free. Also, we'll get into this in a little bit. You can apply filters to your views. And so we want to make sure we always have that raw data, which is unaltered, that we can refer back to in case any of our filters later on have cut us off at the knees, so to speak. So you create these 3 different views, and then you apply some filters, not on your unfiltered view, but on your master view, on your test view. You can call them something else, but this is a paradigm a lot of people use, so it's nice to stick with them. And one of the new ones is bot filtering. It's a little checkbox. You used to have to write all this regex to filter out bots and go to these forums and figure out like what were the latest bots and everything, and you're like putting that into these filters. But now Google kind of has this service, and it captures about 80%, 90% of bot traffic. This can be a little scary to turn on all of a sudden if you haven't had it on, because you might see your traffic tank, and people don't like to see that. But again, we're trying to measure user intent. We're trying to be effective, and we're effective when we're talking to real people. Filters allow you to do things like remove certain types of traffic from your statistics. If you're a developer hitting your website incessantly, you may not want to be tracked. The Drupal module for Google Analytics and has a nice little feature where it can exclude administrators and logged in users. However, it may or may not work in all contexts of your site, and there may be cases where people aren't logged in at all and you need to test the front end, well, you can filter out IPs or a range of IPs in order to not count your own internal development traffic towards your user statistics. And before you do that, there's a little feature which is called verify this filter, and you can see what's going to happen before it breaks things or just kind of see how it's going to impact your data. But once you apply this filter, it's kind of like a coffee filter. You know, the paper's going to be brown afterwards. The coffee's going to be tasty, but you have to throw the filter and all that junk goes away and you never see it again. So test it out, maybe. Segments, on the other hand, are a really great way of organizing your data or understanding your data according to certain properties that are non-destructive. And you can change these later on. And there's a little like wizard in your segments, and you can use these to run against all your other kinds of reports. You can look at things according to demographics. Now, these are only, again, a small portion of your users because many people do not disclose this information, or they're not logged into Google and haven't, relinquished their privacy. And again, we'll talk some more about that in a little bit. But these cross sections of information can be really useful to help understand user behavior and then cater the way that you're doing things to better serve them. So you can have a segment, for example, that's only focused on mobile traffic. Then you can compare mobile traffic against desktop traffic and see how that is, really affecting user flows, or how people are navigating on the website. Are there patterns, that you can find? Kind of useful. There's another little thing you need to do. When Drupal's helpful, the module's helpful, it'll remind you of this, but if you want to track search, you have to go into analytics and actually turn it on. Otherwise, you can't track search, so you just have to turn it on, and then you put search and strip the query parameters, and maybe you've configured your search differently than this. But do it, because search is like a really great way in sight to understand what users are trying to achieve, what they're looking for, what they're finding, what they aren't finding. And we want to know that. Yes, sir?
Was that assuming that your site search is using Google in some way?
No, not at all. If you use a standard Drupal search, you have Solr, you have any other kind of search installed on your website, that results in a URL being returned. When people type search, that URL and that page is going to have Google Analytics tracking code on it, but it might just look like any other site. And what Analytics does is it will look in the URL and it'll look for what you're searching for. Usually it returns back the search parameters, like, best program in this case. And then you can find out, well, look, a bunch of people are looking for best program, or here's how they're kind of behaving when they are navigating through the site. We'll come back to another important part of traffic search in a second. Direct traffic, you may look at your traffic sources and you see that one of your biggest sources of traffic is direct. You're thinking, great, people know exactly where they are. They're showing up on our doorstep and they're knocking on our door. They know us, they know our brand, they know our URL, they're typing it into their web browser. That may not always be the case. Sometimes they are getting to your site from something else that's not on the internet. They may be getting a newsletter. They may be getting an email from you. You have your website in your email signature, and they're clicking there. That's how they're getting to your home page. Wouldn't it be great to know how people are finding you? That direct source can be broken up into more discrete units that you can have control over if you use UTM parameters. UTM parameters may look familiar to you if you do click on any of those newsletter links. You get a query string, a question mark, followed by a whole bunch of stuff. And what is that stuff? Well, it defines where the traffic is coming from, how they're getting there, why they're getting there. And these are all things that you set up arbitrarily. There's no stuff you just kind of need to have a plan around. That plan is something you can think about in terms of a funnel. The most important thing is a campaign. A campaign may cross all kinds of different media. Say you've got a fundraising campaign, it may be related to things online and offline, and this is kind of broader effort that you're undertaking. And then you're going to communicate across a few different media, and things are going to come in. Now the term is an AdWords specific thing. If you don't use AdWords, you don't need to worry about terms. And content isn't required either. But if you have different ways of people accessing the content, say on the same page, you've got like a banner ad and then you've got like a CTA and another button, you might want to know like where their point of engagement was. And that's a place to specify the kind of content that drove your traffic. This is very important, I think. There are some tools that can help you to manage these UTM links. If you're in a large institution or even a small institution, standardizing the way that you're doing writing these links is quite useful. Otherwise, that will be segmented. There's no case sensitive. There's case insensitivity in UTM links. So if someone writes email capitalized, someone hyphenates it, those are all going to be seen as different properties. So lowercase, typically lowercase, all of your UTMs. Use a generator to track them so that other people will reuse the same ones. There are a number of free spreadsheets out there that you can get that will let you, do all this for free. There are relatively inexpensive services. One is UTM.io, but find your own. And they have some nice little plugins and things that'll let you generate them on the fly, and everyone can go in and catalog them. And you can have a conversation with your team about how you're going to categorize these things, and this sort of strategy can tie into your marketing and all that. If you are running Google Ads, don't use UTMs on those. That'll just get taken care of automatically. Don't use any special characters in your UTM codes. If you have like terms salt and pepper, maybe that's like a big topic for you. Don't use the ampersand because that will kind of explode into different properties once Google eats it. And try to keep them consistent. How many people use Search Console? Yes? Meaning to use Search Console? Yeah? Okay. Hooking up Search Console to your Google Analytics account is relatively painless and easy. I would encourage you all to do it if you haven't already. We were talking about user intent and the ability to track, understand at least how people are getting to your navigating your site once they're there, but how did they get there to begin with when they were in the search engine? What were they searching for? You can't find that out unless you connect Search Console to your analytics. Search Console will tell you, what kind of keywords they were looking for, how that ranks across the rest of the ecosystem, and can allow you to start to strategize around how you're going to write content towards those interests, or reorganize your menu structure, whatever it may be. How many people have heard of Google Tag Manager? How many people have implemented Google Tag Manager on their website? Excellent, good job. We love Google Tag Manager. It has a lot of advantages. And there's a module just like Google Analytics that you can get on D.O. It's fairly easy to install. But what it does is it lets you connect all these other tracking services, not just Google Analytics, through one container. And that has a lot of advantages. First, you're loading all these scripts asynchronously, potentially. You can decide not to do that. But loading them asynchronously will speed up your website. And it will also allow you to experiment and try things and turn them on and turn them off without needing to push code to production, which can be a good thing. But it also may give marketing too much power. But maybe they need some power. They deserve some power to be in control of their own destiny. And they can create, as well, some really some cool events and other tracking utilities. I'll show you in a second. So you can connect. We'll show you an example later of Crazy Egg, but you can connect your Google Analytics through Tag Manager, and then you can deploy new stuff out, and it does version all of those changes as well, which is really nice. So you can quickly revert if things are not working so well, and you can create tags, triggers, and variables, and you can also come back to that in a sec. But you can also track email, PDF, get really granular with what people are actually clicking, more so than you could with regular Google Analytics. And here are some examples of the kinds of things that you can track, the kind of tags that you can put in place. You can track, submitting a form, a telephone link being clicked, That's kind of cool. Are people clicking on your link to call you or not? Where are all your interactions coming from? And all of this is done through this like kind of wizard-like interface. So I don't have one. A wizard-like interface where you can say, hey, look for this, then do that, this if/or thing. Now that has some great advantages. It empowers marketers, but it can be a little bit slow because it's like reading through the whole DOM in order to get that information. You can implement Google Tag Manager using a more sophisticated method, which is JavaScript based. That's called a data layer. You implement a data layer so that it's going to be firing those things much more rapidly. It takes more programming finesse, but it's kind of like one of those things. If you maybe it's efficient to import all your redirects and use that like redirect module, but after a while, you know, it is kind of expensive on Drupal, and you want to move that to code. Same here. This is a little bit of magic. Sorry, the video may or may not play, but GTMBot is a tool that you can use to set up from fresh a Google Tag Manager account, and you answer some questions, and it's like a little bit of a wizard, and it's going to generate all these kinds of tags for you based on the kinds of properties that you want to track. And let's see if it'll work. I'll give you an idea. Nope. Not sure why am I. Sorry. Maybe this will work. All right. Well, imagine it. It's a robot. It's magic. It becomes unpixelated. And you know, you do need to know a little bit about what you're doing. This is useful if you have a lot of web properties and you're trying to replicate some setups. It can also be great for just experimenting and getting going really quickly to see what all this stuff does. You click some random stuff, and then you'll have some tags in your Google Tag Manager account. Cool. So far, so good. Another few tips and tricks. There's this plugin called Tag Assistant. It's falling out of favor a little bit. We like this one called Data Slayer. You can use it to track all types of events on your site and see real time what's actually happening and what's firing. In your earlier example, I couldn't show this to you, but you get this sidebar panel, and it's kind of like, you know, when you look at the web inspector, but real time, as you click on different links, it'll show you like, oh, what's being tracked, what's being clicked, what's it sending to Google Analytics to make sure your stuff is happening. So, you know, you dig into all that stuff in analytics and try and find it, but it's much better to go to the source. So, pretty cool. Here are some examples. It'll show you, the UA code, what's happening. So we categorize it as a newsletter click. The action, this is something that was set up in Google Tag Manager. They have a button called sign up for our newsletter. So we could call it that, sign up for it. It makes sense when you're reporting on it. It's, not some like weird number, character, class or something. And where they're going. So useful for QA. Word about, analytics is the most widely used platform. Google Analytics is the most widely used platform. But there are others. Does anyone use Adobe Analytics here? No? All right. Matomo? Anyone use Matomo? Yes. Matomo used to be called Piwik. It's an open source analytics program. You can install it on your own servers. You get a lot of the same information, a lot of the same concepts apply. You're not sending all your data over to Google. So this could be very useful if you have privacy concerns or other kinds of compliance requirements. But I would encourage you to check it out. How many people have used Google Data Studio before? A couple? Ooh, okay. Google Data Studio is like analytics meets PowerPoint. It's pretty cool. It lets you build these data dashboards. I mentioned earlier, you've got all these different kinds of menus that you can navigate to find all these answers, potentially, and you're trying to cobble it together in your head, What if you've got multiple websites? You have to log into one analytics account, and then you're flying around to the other, and then you're like, how do you compare these like variations across your ecosystem? It's really quite difficult.
What is it called again?
Google Data Studio. It is free as of 2016. It used to be a paid product. It's gaining in popularity. All of those widgets that you see when you log into Google Analytics, those interactions, those graphs, those charts, this is like a builder that you can use to put those together yourself. You drag one of those widgets, you put it on the page, you resize it, then you connect it to a data source that will feed data into it. Super cool because you can do things like build a comprehensive dashboard across your ecosystem that compares how your 3 websites are performing against one another. You can add additional useful information that wouldn't ordinarily appear in Google Analytics that explains why this is even meaningful. Why do we care about this data? What should we be looking for? What is a healthy metric? What is an unhealthy metric? It's like help text for your analytics. These reports are drawing on live data, which helps stakeholders make informed decisions. It's fabulous. We want to empower people to make informed decisions. And we don't want to be sending emails of PDFs back and forth that are stale. These reports can be interactive to the extent that you define them. You can expose some properties, and definitely some politicized results here. The filters are very binary, certainly, but it is up to you to define how you want people to interact with your data. You can expose some timelines so people can have the same data accessible to them and say like, oh, how was this in January? Drop down, check January, and all that dashboard, which is self-contained and only showing the highest level information, remains intact. You can get really fun with it. Here's an example someone put together that drawed from some data that IMDb had around M. Night Shyamalan's Success and then Plunge. And he was drawing that information out of a spreadsheet. The amazing thing about Google Data Studio is you're not limited to the data that's coming out of analytics. You can connect it with Google Sheets. You can connect it with big data. You can connect it with MySQL. You pull information straight out of your Drupal site and report on it in the context of a beautiful little PowerPoint presentation. There are third-party connectors that allow you to connect your social media accounts, so you can look at how your Twitter and your Facebook are interacting with the rest of your analytics data. You can pull all kinds of interesting things in there. Many ecosystems use third-party systems, tools. Perhaps MailChimp, you've got a MailChimp newsletter sign-in. Google Analytics is going to track, maybe clicks on that button, but then, what happens, how do you want to maybe report against that in a broader context of engagement compared to like your overall total subscribers? So you can say, oh, we got 12 clicks this month. We have 20,000 subscribers. And then you put a little help text like our target for the quarter is 25,000. So you can use that data and say like we're 75% towards our goal or something. I don't know. I didn't do the math. So pretty cool. There are some other tools as well that are available that do something similar to Google Data Studio. Power BI, which is a Microsoft product. Tableau, which is quite popular, and they have a very decent nonprofit license as well. They were acquired recently by Salesforce for some ridiculous amount of money, so hopefully that support will last. Databox is another tool which I like. You can do quite a lot at the free tier for now, at least. And it provides some advantages over Google Data Studio in that its reports are in the browser and responsive, so you can use it to really see things well on your mobile phone, but then you could throw them up on a screen and have that be like a dashboard reporting against stats and things that are going on. It'll connect again to multiple sources. So like Friday, when your team is engaged, or your clients or your team are engaged in that big campaign, that fundraising campaign, and they have this goal, and they're about to go home really depressed because things are not going the way that they planned, and they come back on Monday morning and realize someone had made like a really fabulous donation on Friday at 4 p.m., but no one was looking at the analytics, like staring at them live. If they had a dashboard, they may have had reason to celebrate and see all these things happening and keep the momentum going and come back Monday with a much more renewed perspective. So again, it depends on your purpose, but these are really great tools for getting things moving in your organization. This is click, move, and scroll maps. These are from Hotjar. Hotjar will let you track up to 1,000 sessions, or 1,000 views, in your account. And you can see how people are behaving on your website. Where are they hovering their mouse? Where are they clicking? How far down the page are they going? This can be useful again for measuring engagement. Do you have articles people are looking at all the way down? This gives you a visual cue. One of the nice things about Google Tag Manager is there are some scripts that will fire when the user reaches like halfway down the page or 3/4 down the page. Those can be super, super useful again for measuring that engagement. But this is another way of doing it visually, and it will help you see where the hotspots are, where people are clicking, and whether or not they're actually clicking on that CTA. Oh, now videos work. You can also play back those sessions to see kind of in real time how people are moving and clicking around, and you can kind of speed it up. Oh, they're scrolling, they're hovering, they're clicking. Okay, this is how people are behaving. Again, caveat, there are some data privacy concerns with these kinds of methodologies, and you may want to be disclosing that you're tracking people to this extent. There's another little plugin called Page Analytics. Some people like it, some people don't. It throws out these little colored boxes over all the links on your website, and you can see what percentage of engagement people are having across them, which can be useful. Useful for highlighting some deficiencies on the page. We were looking at this web page and this button here, which is the most important thing on the page. You want people to donate, and 0% of people are clicking on it. Maybe time to redesign that to make it look like a button. Yes, sir?
That's a plugin for Tag Manager or for what?
This is a Google Chrome browser plugin. As is, no, this is a product, so you would log in to see this. And then this is a browser plugin like Data Slayer. But don't be constrained by what Google Analytics provide you. Occasionally, you may not be tracking the information that you need. You may have data sources that are outside of that scope. And again, we're here to tell a story, a compelling story. We had a whole bunch of user data, not user data, customer data for a client, and just kind of curious about where people were residing, and decided to map it out. Used this is a Mapbox, and connecting to a CSV, just reverse geocoded the addresses, and we found that there were dots way outside of their service area, addresses all the way around the world. And they were wondering, perhaps no longer, why people weren't paying their bills because they had left their parents' mailing address before going to school, and so mail wasn't getting returned, or people weren't responding quickly enough, and it allowed them to start to correct and look into how to better serve their populations. Surveys are really powerful. Google Forms, MailChimp, other things, reporting back on that can help you drive and understand user behavior. In this case, we looked at how different constituents were engaging with the website, how frequently were they visiting the home page or other parts of the website. And what this told us was, if we wanted to say something urgent to faculty, it's probably not going to be on the website because they're headed there every so often. And not too many people are there daily, but overall undergrads more so. And then it kind of tapers off. So understanding your audience and their behavior, you may not be able to get this historically, but it is stuff that you can track through custom properties in analytics if you can pass those around based on user login. You can pass user role into analytics and be able to track things like that. But again, as you're starting out, don't feel completely limited by what is at hand. You might need to go out and dig a little bit deeper. The opening slides that I presented around some of the trends in television, screen use, all just a sliver of what's really compelling and interesting in this report. I invite you to check it out if you're curious at all. It's trends in 2019 around the internet and how people are using it. I'm going to photograph that. There is a demo account which you can check out. This is super awesome. The demo account will get you connected to the Google Store. So you get all of the data that's coming in from the store, all the real data of what people are purchasing and how they're interacting with things, and you can play around with that. And they have all their e-commerce, their views, their filters, everything set up. You'll see the test, the master, the raw data view, and you can go and play around with this. You visit this website and it'll pull it into your Google Analytics account, and you're off to the races in terms of poking around at like a really high level professional off a Google account. And then you can start messing around with it and trying things pretty freely. Analytics.google.com/analytics/web/demo account. If you do want to engage in data layer work, this is a website that you can use to test things out. enhancedecommerce.appspot.com. Pretty cool. Developers take note. And last but not least, we have some tips for you. A lot of what was presented in this talk is available in a PDF download. You don't need to put your information into anything. It'll just download. But you will notice a UTM link trigger when you hit this. And I have a few copies printed out if anyone would like to take them with them today. But that is the extent of the presentation format. Questions? Yes, sir.
So you mentioned at the beginning of this the talk about the session duration is not tracked on the websites.
Yeah.
If you do set up triggers in the Google Tag Manager or events, I'm assuming in Classic, would that extend the session duration?
To a certain extent, yeah, you can fire things like they have what's called exit pops. You might have seen this when you try and close your browser tab and then like something happens and says, hey, do you really want to go? Or some like last minute thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of cheating a little bit, but you can do that. Yeah. Any questions?
So back to the UTM codes, do you recommend using URL redirects or short links only for like printed pieces or like ones that you would display, or would you also use that in like email signatures and things like that when people might just copy and paste rather than actually click on the visible link? Sorry if that wasn't.
So is your question like when should you use short links? When should you use UTM links? Can they coexist? Should they coexist?
Yes, so essentially my question is when should you use a redirect link with the UTM code behind it?
Mm-hmm.
And when should you just kind of
Use a short
keep
link?
your visible URL the same everywhere and then have different UTM codes behind it?
Okay, so a short link like a bit.ly or one that you manage on your own. Most of the time, short links don't use the same domain as the destination domain, so they're going to be a referrer, right? And this can be a little bit tricky. So you get a referral back from your short link, and then you refer to the UTM link, and then that goes into your analytics. This is general practice, but sometimes it's not always possible to set things up that way. Maybe I'm not like fully understanding the nuance of your question.
Okay. I think that
Talk about it a
answered
bit later.
like half of it,
Half of
so
it.
that's good.
Okay.
When would you want to use, so if you're sending someone to google.com with the UTM code,
Uh-huh.
and you want to put in your flyer, go to google.com
I
or
see.
google.com.
Yeah, I mean those are long, right? So you can like they're
Right, you can't just print them.
No, that's why you create a short link from that longer URL. That's what I did for that
Okay.
bit.ly
So
link.
you
Is I
would
just
only-
took the
only
UTM
use
and then
selectively.
And then I actually messed up because I was like, I had this presentation and, these were printed before and they were all like that -11 and I didn't have, I had the wrong UTM code associated with it. I couldn't change it afterwards from the short link because we made a new version just for you that was more updated. So it was sending off to the wrong one, so I couldn't edit that short link afterwards. That's the thing about short links, or anything. You got to think that like it's printed, it's done. you can't change where you're sending people afterwards. So you got to keep making new short links.
Well, you could just make your own redirect, like in Drupal, and make kind of,
You
that way
could.
it won't say bit.ly, that can be redirected to the,
You could.
queries. Make it look a little bit better.
Yeah, you could a little bit, but other questions? Yes, sir.
So you had, when we were talking about search, I set up the search console, and you had mentioned you can see what they're not finding on search, and that's kind of the question we're trying to answer is how effective is search, or how do you kind of dice it up a little more than just looking at the top search terms and figure out, are people finding what they're looking for on search or not?
Right.
Approach that.
Well, Search Console will connect that search intent with the outcomes and the results. So if maybe, it might expose that you have a page that's now redirecting, that's like a 301, or maybe you had a 404 that was indexed by Google before, so you can unearth some of those things. But in terms of guessing, like, well, are people finding exactly what they're looking for? You can see the search terms and that there are, unless they're visiting your site, they're probably going elsewhere. You're not showing up, right? So you can't know, you can only know what people are finding at the lower end of the funnel and actually following through on, but you won't get statistics of necessarily what people are searching for in your report, at least initially, that if they haven't visited your website, right?
Oh, I mean the internal site search?
Oh, internal site search?
Yeah, so how would
Yes.
you say, okay, the internal site search, there's 5,300 different terms people are plugging in.
Yeah.
How do we know if they're actually finding what they're looking for?
Well, you would get, so there's a whole search section inside of Google Analytics, and you can look at those reports and see what terms are going to which pages. You can look at it the other way around and look at the most popular pages and what all the terms are that are getting people there. And that's another way of slicing it up. And you want to think about, are those the terms that we want to be driving, like, or perhaps those are terms, like, okay, say you have a recipe about applesauce, and everyone's looking for applesauce, and you want them to find your recipe about applesauce. This confirms, you think this is confirming things, but you kind of like look through the article, and it really doesn't mention applesauce that much. Like, maybe you might want to throw some more sauce in, just to help out with that rankings, and that'll impact like organic search as well.
I got a comment on that also. I every once in a while I will actually look through the entire list. I'll set like Google to like 500 results per page on internal search terms, and like I work for a transportation agency, and one of the things we do is write parking tickets, and people were putting their citation numbers into our search engine, which is not something it's designed to deliver. But what I did was on if somebody got a no results search result, I have a link to the look up your citation page.
Okay.
So you may be able to, if I was being particularly industrious, I might come up with a JavaScript that actually does the query, except that they have to do like a CAPTCHA when they get to that other website. So I probably can't. But just figuring out, are people misusing the search engine to find things that it can't deliver, and giving them some other way to get what they want.
Well, and one of the big problems in like a Drupal site search would be that they're searching for things that aren't nodes. Like they're searching for something that's like a listing page, like a panels page that's not in your content search. So then you have to think about, redesigning your site so that the content is nodes and not some other type of Drupal page.
Or indexable in some way, or another. Limitations of site search. Drupal, please. Other question? not Steelers. Yes, sir.
How does A/B testing tie into analytics?
Good question. Google does have a product called Google Experiments, and you can implement that and track, it's like A/B or sometimes multivariate testing, and deliver different versions of the page, and then look at the results of those experiments. It's a separate product now. It used to be a little bit more rolled into the basic analytics, but they broke it back out, and now you do have to pay for it. But it is possible to do that kind of thing inside of analytics. But then you have to figure out how you're going to deliver different pages or variants of pages from within Drupal, which is a huge pain in the rear sometimes. Yes. Any questions? I don't want to keep you. I know there's beer to be had, and refreshments, but I'm happy to answer more questions, or we can keep talking. Three things? Anyone? Yes.
There's a lot of resources on, digging deeper into Google Analytics. Do you have any particular organizations that are good for taking the training, online training, or anything like that?
SCMrush has got a lot of really great articles. SCMrush, their product, but they have a lot of really good articles generally about search and searching, search generally. And they're quite helpful. They don't always push the product. A lot of these other ecosystems like the shared solutions space, the solutions gallery are quite useful. There is a kind of a by invitation, if you're really into like analytics, there's a by invitation Slack group called Measure, where a lot of the professional analysts hang out and other things. I think there might be a couple forums for more people who have more introductory questions, but that's the space where those communities gather. Otherwise, I'm not sure. Neil Patel's got a pretty good site. You know him? Neil Patel. He's cool. His site is super well optimized for all the conversions. It's a funny character. Other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.